Hello. Today we're guests of Mr. Hank Gilpin. For those who might know who Mr. Hank Gilpin is, I will try to put it in a few words. I'm sure I'll miss something, but I'll try. An educator, a mentor, a designer of different things, and a landscape architect lately, a wood grain aficionado, and I would not remiss a national treasure.
I wouldn't go that far, but
But I think it is.
okay.
So, how would you describe yourself these days, in this point of your life?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question. And the answer could be very complicated. Let's start with the easiest part.
Okay.
Old and cranky and hurt in the back and happy with what I did in life. Feeling
Okay.
so amazingly lucky to have lived off my wits and skill and support myself and family, etc. I mean, I can't tell you how incredible that is to have 50 years.
Yes, 50 years.
So, every nickel I made, I had to make by making things. And it was I feel so good about it. That's all there is to it. That's where I am right now. I'm older, I'm happier, I'm successful enough, and I'm still kind of working, but don't tell anybody.
Oh, we are all working around you when it's possible, and I was fortunate to do some work with you, and it was very interesting. The work was never dull.
It shouldn't be.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I to that point, during some of the difficult financial times over the years, I've been somewhat lucky to not lose everything. I always had something coming in. And sometimes I had more coming in than a lot of other guys. And my job was to send it out and keep everybody alive. I don't know if I've ever told you that before, but that was an objective. There's a lot of woodworkers during some of these recessions that were having a difficult time, and I wanted to help them stay alive because I need them. I learned that from one of my clients.
Yes, it's very important because sometimes don't have a cushion.
Exactly.
Sometimes we're buried with a huge overhead. And that's where I can relate to that.
I wasn't buried in huge overheads because I was crazy enough when I was 26 to buy a building, which meant I only had one overhead my whole life. So that gave me a little bit of a cushion. Mm-hmm. And I do, I've always suggested to whoever's working here, once they've decided that this is what they want to do, I always said, you got to buy a building. And none of them did. Here's an interesting way to look at it. I've explained this to my guys probably ad infinitum, but if your overhead for a shop is 20 grand a year, just a number out of the
Yes,
head.
just the
And you work 50 years. You got to make $1 million just to cover your overhead.
yes.
But if you eliminate that overhead problem, that money can go to better places. And you eliminate it by doing many different things. But somehow it escapes a lot of people that see let's make believe you're 26 and you buy a building, and you're really pushing yourself to the edge financially. Mm-hmm. 5 years from then, it's the same number.
Yes.
You bought the building, you're paying $100 a month, and it's freaking you out because you can hardly come up with $100. But 5 years later, it's $100 a month. 10 years later, it's $100 a month, when the average cost at that time is now $500 a month. So you have fixed your costs when you're young and struggling. But no one did it.
It's difficult.
I did say that.
It's difficult. And what did make you do that? Because at 26, it's quite young to have such a huge leap. Is it your background that brought you to this? What's your background? What your parents do? I know your father was in insurance, and what do they do?
Yeah, he was an insurance guy. But mostly what he was a realist that put me to work at 11
Okay.
with the attached responsibility of saving most of what you earn at 11.
Mm-hmm.
So I always saved. I worked through high school. I worked through college. And the agreement with college was my father would pay half.
Mm-hmm.
I had to pay the other half. So I had this sort of built-in need to save money. There's always something coming you can't see. So then I went in the Army. And when you get out of the Army, they give you separation pay. And it's based on how much leave you took and your rank at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate to have achieved a fairly good rank in a very short period of time and didn't take much leave. So when I got out, I got a hunk of money. I got $2,000 in 1970. I stuffed it in the bank, and I never touched it while I was going through grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And then this building became available.
So why the army? Were you drafted?
I got drafted.
Oh, okay, you were drafted.
You think
Okay.
you were saying? You wait a minute.
No,
did
that's
you
why.
think I
That's why
would
I'm
enlist in
asking.
the No, I only stayed in college to stay out of the draft.
Okay. And in college, you were studying what?
I got a degree in photojournalism,
Okay, so then you went to army, and
and
you
they made me a
used that-
photojournalist. I was a
Okay.
combat photographer in Vietnam, and then I got out. I got out because the Army had a early release program, which meant if you went back to school, they would let you out of the Army up to 3 months early to go back to school. And I thought, well, this is a good idea. So I immediately applied to 2 schools to study photography, and I got into RISD, can't tell you why, had no portfolio to speak of, and therefore got out of the Army, in my case, 2 months early.
Okay. So, okay.
Which 2 months early in Vietnam is a good thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. I'm
So
sure.
then, then the RISD thing was, I was studying photography, and you have to take electives
Mhm.
to fill up your. I was a
Yes.
junior. They let me in as a junior because I didn't have any art credits, and you have to take electives to fulfill the obligations. So I took I wanted to work with my hands. This is
Okay.
leading to where you wanted to go, because I'd always done stuff when I was a kid. And so I wanted to take glass blowing because it was just magical, hot,
is. Oh,
flaming
it's cool.
jewels. But it was full. I couldn't get in. So the other option was clay or wood. And both meant working with your hands, and I didn't give a shit what it was. So I flipped a coin, it came up wood. And that's how I got into the wood shop.
And that's how you met Take Free.
Well, yeah, then I'm taking the 3-credit class. Yeah, and he was this flamboyant, charismatic, fun guy, skilled he knew everything about woodworking. And the first day in class, I've told this story a million times. First day in class, he comes in, and he always wore a coat and tie. Comes in with his coat and tie, takes off his coat, rolls the sleeves up, goes out into the alleyway where there's this steaming box, and he comes back in with a piece of steamed ash, and then he ties it in a knot. That was it for me.
And that was what year?
1970.
1970.
70. Would have been spring of 71, spring semester. And then so I had to make a steam bent rocking chair, of course.
Okay.
For
How did
the
that go?
first thing I ever made.
How did that go?
Went very well.
Oh.
It went extremely well. And at the end of my making that, Fred came up to me at the end of the class and said, "You should be a woodworker." And I said, "Okay." And then he made me a grad student because I had a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the great fortune of having 2 benchmates in the graduate room that were inspiring and engaging and interesting characters. Alphonse Mattia and Roger Bergen, both sadly are out of here. But having benches next to those guys You know, Alphonse was this incredibly crazy, outrageously talented guy in every way. And so I'm watching him right next to me. It's just making me do stuff I would have never dreamed of doing. He pushed me. I don't get intimidated by much. I get inspired. So here's this guy doing stuff I couldn't dream of, and it just made me achieve a higher level of whatever I was doing. So yeah, that changed my life. It was the best 2 years, maybe not the best two, but 2 incredibly great years of being in the bench with Alphonse and Roger Bergen, making stuff, dreaming things up, making believe I'm going to be a successful woodworker.
Okay.
As Fred came in, I told this story too. Only got 4 stories. I'll tell them all. Fred went on sabbatical, winter session. He goes away, and we make pieces. And he came back, and I had this desk. It was pretty complicated, roll top desk, timbres. And he walks into the grad room. I'm standing right next to it. He looks at it, looks over at Alphonse, and says, "Fonzie, who made this piece of shit?" And then he points at the window, which he often did, and said, "Boys, it's cold out there. Who's going to buy this? And if you sell one, can you sell another one?" That's the way he taught us. And it was a realistic approach to. He was teaching us to make practical, everyday furniture that people would want to have in their house. Mm-hmm. And I bought into this. I bought into it.
And you were successful because of that, probably. Not because you were just, sometimes the artistic carries us away.
I had none of that. I had zero of that. I had none of that at all. I just wanted to make, I wanted to work with my hands and my mind in my own shop, making things, and to succeed financially. I made the decision to make practical, pragmatic pieces of furniture that people in New England mm-hmm. would find acceptable to put beside their already well-established historical houses. I made no reproductions ever. So, to make stuff that people can identify as, oh, that's a nice table, that would go in the den, was probably my objective. Certainly after 1 year. Maybe I had to make an adjustment period, but for example, we had a shop rule the first year, no curves.
Okay.
Can't afford it.
That shop rule over there with take or here?
No, down here.
Oh, down here, okay.
Yeah. No, 1 through joint, no curves, straight lines, beautiful wood, simple design. Mm-hmm. That was to try to make something that people would pay for.
Yes.
And here's this other story I've told 1,000 times. How is it that I'm in a suburban neighborhood with a wood shop? I had to get a zoning variance.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Huh?
I never thought of that.
Well, here I come. And let's be clear. When I bought this place, Lincoln was rural. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the suburbs it is today. You can be sure of that. There was a dairy farm right there.
Yes.
The high school was just built on a dairy farm. Anyway, so I'm buying this building. Oh, it's a New England Baptist church in Lime Rock. Mm-hmm. So it's the Lime Rock Baptist Church. Mm-hmm. And the people are selling it. And why are they selling this? I mean, look at this cute little thing. Because the Tapners and the Conklins, old New England Yankees, wouldn't sell them land for a parking lot. And the road, I got a picture, I'll show you later, of this road with cars lined up and down on Sunday morning. Fire trucks couldn't get by. Mm-hmm. So they had to sell. So they built a new church up the street. So this was for sale. And Fred, was buddies with Al Gorey, I don't know, somebody who was the financial officer of RISD and for this church.
Okay.
So he told Fred that this building was going to be for sale. And Fred brought me and Alphonse and Roger out to take a look at it. And I was like, I can live here because it's like a loft, but it's in the country. So the church then called me and said, hey, we got a problem. Another church made an offer, met our number, and we don't want to sell it to another church. So if you give us 1,000 more, we'll sell it to you. So for 21,000, I got this building, but then I didn't. But then I had to get a zoning variance. So back then I had a lot of hair, all over the place, long mounds of hair, and maybe even a beard. I don't know. So I go to the zoning board meeting, and the guys are sitting up there. It's all guys. They're what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And I say, we're going to have a wood shop. I'm going to start a business. And I'm going to make furniture. And I'm going to work alone. And the head of the zoning board says, what do you mean you're going to work alone? I said, well, I'm going to be he said, no, you're not. Nobody works alone. You can't work alone. So then agreement to no big trucks and things, and they gave me the zoning variance with 2 helpers.
Okay.
2 weeks later, I'm here. There's a knock on that door. It's the head of the zoning board, Ken Tucker, who turns out was an antique dealer. Turns out he needed things repaired. So he offered me work right away. It was great. We had a great relationship. I ended up repairing and making parts for 18th century American furniture under his tutelage, which opened up my eyes to the history of furniture and gave me some, real insights in how things were made then. Cabriole legs and all that stuff. So we did that. It was very good. I'd go down to his house once a month on a Sunday. We'd sit in his den, which is full of antique tools, and we'd talk history. It was very, very, very. And then he died young because he was using one of these strippers for.
Oh, yeah, those are lethal.
He got brain cancer and.
Yeah, that stuff.
But he was a great guy. So that's how I got. So the church wanted me and not them. Ken wanted me. So all these
He had interest in it.
Huh?
He had interest in it.
He had an interest in it. And he did not let on. And I didn't know who he was. But it was great.
And was that your first bread and butter in the beginning?
No. Well, partly. Okay, here's something that nobody completely understands or knows. I didn't give a shit what I did. I just wanted to work with my hands and work with wood. I didn't care what it was.
Yeah, but you need to eat every day. So
Well, I got to make a living.
Okay.
So I would do anything.
Which is?
Build kitchens, do
Okay.
antique repair, make Fram auto filter displays for lobbies,
Okay.
build bathrooms, repair furniture, you name it. I never said no to anything, ever. But the first job, so I bought the building, and but I bought it before we graduated. I didn't have any money then because I took remember the 2000?
Mm-hmm.
The 2000, really important to have money. That was the deposit, the down payment. Whew.
And then what?
Oh, then I had to get the rest. And I went to the bank. The bankers are so interesting. Oh, Mr. Gilpin, yeah, it looks good. So you're going to start a business, but you don't have any money. And I said, but my wife works. Oh, yeah, the wife. Well, that doesn't count. But it looks good. Yeah, we'll give you the loan. They never did. So I had to hustle and go to my wife's mother and friends and family friends and get $2,000 from them and $3,000. So finally, I got down to. So I had I had $17,000. I needed $2,000 more. So I went to my father. Remember him?
How did that go?
Remember Wild Bill? I went to my father. Oh, and before that, before that, we'd made peace because I'd been in the Army. He was an Army guy, so we'd made peace. We used to be at each other's throats. And I called him. I said, Dad, I'm thinking about buying this building. You want to take a look? I'm doing it just to be a good guy. I knew I was going to buy it. He came up and he walked around the building, didn't even come inside, and said, buy it. So I'm down to like needing 2,000 more. I go to him. I said, Dad, I need 2,000 more to get the building. He goes, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Okay. So then I scrambled and got the money. So I borrowed the money, eventually the mortgage was consolidated under my mother-in-law at the time. Then I'm broke. I needed money for machines. So I go back to my father. This is his way of, he says, okay, man, you got the building? How much you need for machines?
Okay.
He gave me what I needed. Loaned it.
Yes.
Loaned it.
Okay.
I paid it off in work. For him. Yeah.
So you work for your father?
No, I paid it off doing things for
Okay.
for his house. You know,
Okay.
whatever he needed. No, what I'm doing now is I'm working for Fred. I got the building. It's the summer after graduation. I'm starting to collect things that I need. I think I started with a table saw, drill press, and a jointer, I think. I can't remember. It took me 7 years to get all the machines because I never went into debt. I stayed out of debt. I never created any debt. I would figure out how to do it without debt. So I got out of college, grad school, and Fred asked me and Alphonse to work for him, which was an honor, big time. And his lifestyle out there in Foster in the 1780 Cape with a barn out back with a shop in it, and the house on the exterior looked like 1780. You go inside and it looked like Danish modern. He had tuned it up and taken walls down and all his furniture and artwork, and I was just, I didn't know this existed, this kind of life. And he'd go to work. We started work at 7. Coffee break at 10. Emma, his beautiful, lovely wife, would come out with a freshly made coffee cake and coffee. And we could talk then, because you don't talk in the shop ever. Not one word is spoken during the day other than, here's what you're going to do it. We could have a little chit-chat at coffee break. And then back to work, half an hour lunch, back to work, 3:30. At 3:30 on the dot, when the clang for 3:30 went, Fred was sawing a piece of wood and the clock went off. He walked out the door. Workday was over.
Okay.
He worked 8 hours, really hard. I mean, there was no fucking around in his shop. And then he would go out to his pigs, his chickens, his horse, his cow, his garden, his pond of fish, and his yard to maintain in the fields of hay. That was the other thing. He said.
So he went to do more work.
Pardon?
He went to do more work.
He says, we're all, people like us are born to work, but you have to mix it up so you don't get stale. So you enjoy other aspects of life. You can put the same effort and passions into it, but just spread it out. Don't work 12 hours a day. You'll get stale and sick of it and wish you could do it. And I took that to heart. Yeah.
It's a great advice.
So we're in the shop. This is like December. Yeah, December. Alphonse had left already because he was teaching. He was off to his teaching gig, but I'm still working there. And I, mentally, I was prepared to work there as long as he'd keep me. I was loving it to death. We did so many cool things. Phone rings, December 10th or something. No, I'm not interested. Oh, wait, hold on, I got a guy here for you to take care of you. He hands me the phone, and it's a couple in Providence who want a kitchen built. I don't know how to build a kitchen. And I said, yeah, I'll talk to you. And then I did, and Fred gave me a quick tutorial on how to build a kitchen, plywood.
Which is completely different from what you were doing before.
I'd never, I'd done, that's another good story. I had not really only done one plywood thing in 3.5 years. Yeah. Yeah, so so I did it. And then that led to, okay, turns out that, oh, I know. I was going to go to Rhinebeck, which was a craft fair out in New York State that all crafty people went to. And I had designed some cutting boards and cheese boards and a few other cool things. And I was going to sell them for $30 a piece or something. And then I did a kitchen for, $4,500. And I made $1,000 profit.
Okay,
And I did,
that's pretty good.
How many of these do I have to make the same? So that was the end of the cheese board world. And let's see, this is how this worked out. That led to another job, which led to a plumber who plumbed the job I did and said, I want you to build my summer home kitchen. That steamrolled. So I did kitchens for like 8 or 10 years, on and off, and concurrently doing antique restoration. And I started to get a reputation for that through Ken. I got all these jobs, not the least of which was doing all the Napoleon pieces that belonged to the Risley Museum. We restored all those. That led to restoring a whole guest house of antiques at Brown. And it started to steamroll. And I think it was probably about 1979. I just said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not the direction I want to go in. I'd always make a piece of furniture while I'm doing these other jobs, little things. And maybe a few commissions even, can't remember. But at one point I just said no more antiques. And that was closing that door. It was like the end of 70s. Not knowing what's going on. Yeah. And then, what else?
But did the antiques gave you the restoration of antiques, working on antiques, repairing them, gave you more knowledge of how things are done?
Oh, immense. And I told you it encouraged me to study.
Yeah, which for me, I'm from the paint background, and for me, it relates to you copy the masters. You learn by copying first, and then you go to develop your own things. You might not be successful in developing because not everybody makes it, but you learn that basic, or you're trying to achieve what these masters did before. And for me, it's kind of correlates to one another, and that's why I'm asking whether you learned a lot more, maybe because learning from Fried is one thing, but also because he might be a little bit more refined, more of his style, but working on something else like antiques would be creating a more experience for you?
That's an interesting way to ask the question. The question is actually answered that the studying of the antiques wasn't so much about the specifics related to design, but more about the evolution of the making of pieces. It was the beginning of my understanding of style and how a given style, Queen Anne, Applewhite, Sheridan, Chippendale, predated the idea of individual designers. Back then, some singularly talented people would come up with an expression that somehow became the zeitgeist of the moment in the design world, and everybody made it. And what I realized was the creativity that people bring to that world was expressed in how they offered this narrow vision of what was acceptable. Like, for example, everybody made ball and claw feet. But if you look at the feet from Boston,
To
Newport, Philadelphia, they're all ball and claw. but they're really different.
Hmm.
That was an eye-opener. I mean, you got to study to understand that.
Yes.
And then it was the idea of the evolution of this whole concept of design that traveled through the wild chaos of the industrialization, which actually created the opportunity for individual designers. It started with Ruskin and things in England. Until then, everybody made what everybody was making. But around that period, late 1850s or 60s, there was this fork in the road, and individual designers started to show up.
Hmm.
Blah, blah, blah.
Are we still relevant as individual designers or producers of furniture, cabinetry, and other things that people are using in the industrial area? The area that we are right now, where there's the stores of things that you go and buy, are we still relevant?
Relevant. Well, it's a good question. I did it for 50 years. Does that make me relevant, or does it just make me lucky?
I think it makes you both, but from your position of doing it 50 years, do you think is it still something that
I would say, okay, that I can twist that around a little bit. I was extremely fortunate to have come upon this world at a really good time.
yes.
The re-engaging of the populace with the idea of craft
Yes, the studio
versus
furniture.
the diminishing quality of industrialization at the time allowed for people to wrap their heads around more expensive, highly crafted furniture as an acceptable option. And it was a hit. There was probably from 1980 to 2005. If you were a fairly skilled, hardworking, woodworking designer in all different voices,
Hmm.
you could probably make a go of it, whatever that means. I mean, I know you can because I know a bunch of people that did.
Not all of them survived, but
No. Well, there was a singularly artistic direction that drove most of the individuals, well, not most, maybe half, versus pragmatic usefulness as a,
mhm.
and even those that were making furniture that was useful, it wasn't always pragmatic. It was often overwrought and extraordinarily demanding and fear-inducing that you might hurt it if you used it.
Yes, I can relate to that.
I know guys that made that kind of stuff. It was really magically beautiful stuff, but I mean, careful, don't scratch it. That doesn't work for me.
So you were a mentor to a lot of people. How many apprentices do you have?
46.
46. What's the most valued to you quality of a person who comes in here and tries to do that?
The most what?
The most valued quality of that person.
Oh, do I like them?
Okay, and second?
Can we talk?
Okay.
Most everybody that I've trained came from non-woodworking backgrounds. Well, not most, but a lot.
Nobody wakes up one day or goes to kindergarten and says, I want to be a woodworker. It's not out there.
Let's see. Well, I did take on a number of, for about 10 years, I took on a lot of RISD grads. And they were just terrible. Either thought they were God's answer to the world of design, or they were totally unskilled and didn't. But then I started taking on people that had no background. Sylvan, Ken Sherdell, Mark Gower, Matt, Ron, 5 guys in between there when Sylvan was the arbiter of who stayed and left. Didn't.
I didn't know it was her purview.
Oh yeah, when she once I mean she was so incredibly good in every way. She was the first person that walked through the door who intuitively, instinctively understood that you have to make a profit, which is not the same as I want to be paid a lot of money.
Yes.
What most people walk through the door and I want $50 an hour. She walks through the door and says, we got to make profit here to make money. And she got it. And she learned fast. She had no background in I gave her a plane and she said, what's this? What do you do with this? 2 days later, she was expert in that plane. Showed her how to cut dovetails. She never heard them. Boom, perfect. And we made money. She worked fast enough, clean enough, so we made profit. And I'm a profit-sharing outfit because my format here is you get a salary so that you can count on some money, even if you're sick. But it's not a gigantic salary. It's a good salary, good enough. But then if we make a lot of money, then at the end of the year, then I cut people profit-sharing checks. And she just loved that. So then the format here is I take on a person who knows nothing. They want to be a woodworker. They want to be an artist, whatever they want to be. They have no background, and we'll take them on because we like them, and they're passionate or something. But they don't get any pay for 1 year. We take 1 year of our time to train them to try to achieve some beginning of excellence that would allow us to hire them and start paying them. So for a year, we're not exactly benefiting from their presence, but we're giving them a free education.
Which cost a lot.
Which costs a lot. And a free lunch. Of course, I paid, like free lunch. We made lunch. At the end of that year, while Sylvan was here, she was in charge of deciding if they stay or don't stay. Because that's the agreement. After a year, we review to see what your situation is, and probably shouldn't say this too loud, but for 5 years in a row, we didn't keep the person we trained for a year. 5 years in a row. But we didn't just boot them. We'd find them.
You're better off doing this, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, because you learn about somebody over the course of a year. And we had one guy who didn't know how to do anything in the kitchen. And while we were doing our woodworking training, he's in the kitchen making lunch with me. He got really good at it. I mean, really good. So we said, you should go into the restaurant business. You'd be so good at this. Another guy went off into contracting. And anyway, we didn't just boot him out because we liked them. But Sylvan was completely aware of their inability to make a profit. Because they could do the work, but it was so slow, so tedious. And if you don't make a profit, you can't run a business. And that is true. So, what was the question?
Oh, the question was the amount of people, what's the best quality you were looking for in that person? But I think you got to it. It's not so much a quality, but the set of mind.
Kind of a mindset, yeah. And can you communicate and engage and be friendly and all those things that make life good? I took on two guys, who were difficult. They thought of this as a competition.
Which is sometimes good.
Never good with me.
Or they were competing with you?
They were competing with whomever they were competing with. And
that's difficult.
You can't compete with me because I'm not going to take it. But I've had some guys who are a little sensitive. And if I got this guy's competing and comparing and racing and trying to get to the finish line before this guy, and it was just the wrong way to be in a shop of three people that have to work together. We're a team. We're not individuals. We're a team. You walk through that door, you're part of the GWOW team. Everything you do is to work with and for everybody else in the shop. So this one guy, he couldn't not compete. And he came into work one day and I said, "You're out of here. No warning. You are screwing things up. You're making it miserable for this other guy, and this other guy is a good man. Now you're out of here. Goodbye." I'm still very friendly with the guy.
Oh, if
His father came up. His father came here years later and said, "I want to thank you for making a man out of my son." I'm still good friends with the guy. Yeah. He calls me more than any of my former apprentices. I booted his ass out of here.
yeah, I mean, sometimes it's needed. I think we all need that push sometimes. And
Something, you never know.
If you do that right, if you receive that push well, it makes you better. It doesn't make you better. I think it makes you better. But
it made him better. Because of his competitiveness, he internalized it and realized he lost the competition, and it helped him turn the corner. I really think that. He's a good guy. He just had this problem. We cut him down.
So the biggest challenge would be working with, and how early did you start having apprentices?
7 o'clock, day 2. Not quite.
When you opened the shop.
Yeah.
How early did you start?
Okay.
Bringing people in.
I immediately took on my best friend who was out of work, and I needed help because Frid made it clear, and Ken Tucker made it clear, you can't work alone. So I took on my best friend, and we worked together for probably, I'm not sure if it was 9 months a year, it doesn't matter. This is a little side story, but he had taken a blacksmith, he's a big, strong guy, he'd taken a blacksmithing 2-week course in Arizona or someplace, New Mexico. And then came back here and was working for a carpenter, got laid off. So he's on unemployment. But he's working with me, still collecting. And unemployment, and he's saying, I'm set, I'm a blacksmith. I'll never get a job. Well, unemployment found a blacksmithing job in Newport, and he had to go interview, and he got the damn job.
So you lost him as a worker?
I lost him, but it made his career. He made a whole career of blacksmithing, yeah. And then I don't remember what happened, but that's when I started doing the apprentice thing. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any money. I couldn't pay anybody. I wasn't making any money.
Yeah, but you had a knowledge at least to share with someone.
In year 2, I had knowledge.
I mean, you had audacity to say I have knowledge.
I do have that, but that doesn't mean I actually have it. I mean, I would say,
and don't sell yourself short, because you already went with working with Fried. You already worked in had a education.
I had an education of sorts. The education that was most valuable was the mindset. I had to unlearn a lot of what Frid taught me woodworking was. His style wasn't my style. His method wasn't my method.
Okay.
The generalization was there, but the way he cut dovetails, the way he cut tenons, the way he did this, the way he did that, I had to undo it because it didn't work for me. Once I realized you could do it in other ways, and as I studied more, because you see, I was kind of the shittiest student in the world till I got out of graduate school. Mm-hmm. And then I became the best student in the world and immersed myself in everything related to woodworking, science of wood, different types of wood, history of wood, shaping, tools, finishing. I would go to the Brown Hay Library and deep dive into their 19th century books on English furniture making. And as you do this, you realize, wait a second, there's more than one way to skin a cat here. So I reinvented how I wanted to work. slowly moving myself to the point where I want to work with hand tools. I don't want to work with machines as much as possible. I want to get away from machines. I don't like noise. And I loved the hand-eye coordination thing that developed over the years. Making, the shapes we do. They're hand shapes. You can't do a lot of them on a machine. Yeah, so that's that. Where was I going with that?
We were going about what makes it and what the transition
I
is.
knew nothing. Let's put it. Let's be clear about this. Like many students who get out of graduate school, they got a graduate degree. They know nothing. Period.
It's a start. Yes.
They have an outline of how to think if they've been trained well, and that's what school is. How to think. But to think that you can put together a complex layers of skill and understanding while you're in school, impossible.
Oh, that's why I'm asking, because when you mentioned you were doing a kitchen, working with sheet goods and working with lumber is a completely different thing, even though some people think, oh, it's the same. You think differently.
Oh, no, it's totally different.
You break it differently, you think differently, you have a different objective. And but is the curiosity of your personal curiosity was driving you forward all the time, or was it just?
Turns out I'm a pretty curious guy. Yeah. One door opens up two more doors. Two doors open up four more doors, and I just got to find out.
Is that the same? You were looking at people who would come here and try to do that, or you would look for them to leave their ambitions and leave their, I'm kind of pushing myself into the box, but leave their curiosity for a bit out until they learn something?
I'm going to be clear about this. I've had one curious person work for me.
And how did that work out?
Well, it was interesting because they were curious.
Okay.
But no, and this is not a denigration of anybody. It's just a describing of a different mindset.
Yes.
I am born curious. I wake up curious. Most people aren't. They just want to work with wood.
Yes, but in a sense of learning, would you prefer somebody to leave their curiosity out of the door or to keep it?
No, I just said there weren't any curious people. You don't develop curiosity. Either you have it or you don't. So hardly anyone who's been here has shown any. I love all these people. Don't get me wrong. They haven't shown any immense kind of like need to have questions filled in their head. They just don't have it. They want to draw. They want to make. They want to go rock climbing.
Okay, nothing's wrong with
There's
that.
nothing wrong with that.
And
Although they should draw more, but that's another question.
we all should do a little bit more.
To develop a design sense, a unique design sense, which was the objective of my era, is each little wood shop was hoping to be identified by their designs.
Yes.
Not what they could make that somebody else did, but what they came up with. And to do that, you got to work at it. You can't just want it. You got to draw and draw and draw and study and look and think and draw and draw and draw. And no one's ever done that here. Closest is Matt and Ron. You're concurrent with that thought is you wake up in the morning, you go to the shop, you don't do anything but make from the time you walk in to the time you go out. None of the other aspects of business are dealt with during that 8-hour period because that's the only time you're making money. You don't make money when you're on the phone, when you're drawing, when you're doing the bills. That's not making you money. So you work 8 hours to make money, then after hours is when you do the other stuff. No one done that either.
No, it's difficult. Everybody wants to have a life.
I know it's difficult, but the day you walk through the door here, I explain this I lay this out. You got to do this. It's going to be a 60-hour work week. But they don't want to do it. They want to climb rocks. It's not a bad thing.
No, we'll need an outlet to
and
vent.
all the other stuff, the business stuff. The drawing part is the most critical thing. You have to be passionate about exploring ideas. And sit down and draw more, and draw again, looking for something that isn't there.
Okay.
You're trying to create something.
Here is a bit of a personal question. We might put it, we might not put it in, but how did that affected your personal life?
Not at all. And why is that?
Why is that?
I live where I work.
But still, it's too close. It's
No. It was a total positive.
Okay.
I had kids. I had dinner with the kids. I read books with the kids at night. And during the day, I'd take time off from the shop and go out in the field and play ball with my son, who was an incredible athlete. And then I'd go in the shop at night when everybody was in bed.
Okay.
And I'd stay in there till, midnight or a little later, drawing. Never working. Always drawing or studying.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a different occupation, so you're
I didn't
breaking
let
from
any of
one
that
to another.
interfere with the family needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you
I figured it out.
can I have some of that?
And you have to live where you work to figure it out that way. And no one's ever done that either. Think of the advantage. My entire life, I've worked here 50 years, my entire commuting time, 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Over 50 years. It's
It's
walk
about
through the
30
door.
seconds.
No, that's total for 50 years.
Yes, okay, yeah,
It's 1 second through the door, I'm in the shop.
yeah.
It's akin to the 20,000 a year you don't have to make. You probably, if your average commute is a half an hour, it's an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 hours a week,
Yes,
20 hours a month, 240 hours a year that you're commuting.
yes,
If it's only a half hour commute,
yes.
240 hours a year, that's 6 work weeks.
No, it's it builds up a lot of time.
It does.
A little second adds up and builds up a lot of time. I mean, we can talk forever, but I think we can wrap up a little bit. I have a few rapid questions.
Go for it.
And just few words. A woodworker is someone who?
Works wood.
Okay. The main task of a woodworker is to.
The main task of a woodworker. Well, you have to put it contextually, but probably the main task is to work cleanly and efficiently, period.
Okay. And a woodworker always should be.
Well, I can only speak for myself.
Okay.
Curious, inventive, ambitious, laser focused.
To become a woodworker, you need to.
Reinvent your future.
Okay. And
Redefine your future. I think, knowing where your mind is trying to go with these questions, it can only come. I mean, the answers coming from a guy like me who's totally driven, wildly ambitious, curious beyond belief, creative enough. All those things. So it became number one. It's got to be number one today to do what we do, to do what I do.
Okay. And a last question.
There's no last question.
I'm sure it's not the last question. As I said, we can go forever, but what is a success?
Pardon?
What is a success?
What is success?
Yes.
Well, that's a large question. Well, the simplest answer is to live off your efforts. Just to be lucky enough to put all those previous drives together that allows you to meet your life's needs by your effort in the shop. That's success to me. And that can manifest in many different ways. I mean, it depends on what you design. And building kitchens is success.
Yes.
They're really important to people. Building step stools.
Yes. Building something that people like, I think.
Building something, success
Or people
is,
like use, not like use.
I think the success to me is like doing what you really like to do to satisfy the needs of bringing in cash and making people happy with your work. That's success. If people come back, that means you're successful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got the dough to keep doing it, that's kind of the critical final success, right? It's not necessarily the joyful aspect, but it's a measure of success.
Okay.
To put enough money in the bank. Period.
Well, here
You
we
gotta,
have it.
the other element. I mean, we didn't touch on this, but we'll touch on it briefly. The second thing I teach after sharpening tools on stones,
Mm-hmm.
is the fact you have to save money.
Yes.
That's the second thing I teach. And for many reasons. In the case of me, that allowed me to, because I don't spend money, I don't spend my profits, I save them. It allowed me to create a shop fund, I called it,
Mm-hmm.
where I had enough money in the shop fund to support the shop for a year without any income coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And, a couple times in 50 years, there's been some downturns.
Oh, the rocky times, yes.
Yeah. And so I'd borrow from that. We'd make spec work.
Mm-hmm.
We'd sell the spec work. I'd repay the fund. And that keeps the shop guys alive while we're trying to get the work that makes us money coming in. That's success to me, is being able to salt away enough cash. And it doesn't have to be a year, but to cover a little rocky period. Rather than buying a nice M5 BMW, you put the money in the bank, and then when things get shitty, which they do, you can keep people alive. Because it's expensive to train.
Yes.
I think that to me is my best success is I've never missed a pay check to my help in 50 years.
It's certainly something to say.
Missed some
for
to
it.
me.
No, yeah. I understand that.
The value of trained people is just crazy important, right?
Yes, but to get to it,
hardly anybody stayed. I'd train them, and then 3 years later they're gone. What a nightmare! You got to start. Matt and Ron stayed the longest of anyone.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Even
Matt was
Sylvan
here
didn't?
14. I think Sylvan was like 8 years.
Okay. So, yeah.
I mean,
it's-
she was like 8 years, and Ken was like 7 or 8 years. 7, 8, 14. Matt was here 14 years. Matt was 21. He was a puppy. I got pictures of him. It's like, oh, God, look at you. You're like he's just like 2 years out of teenagerdom.
Oh, you took him young and you made him into, you clicked.
Both of those guys were in their early 2022, something like that.
Oh, I didn't know Ron was here that early.
Ron
too.
was 22. I think Matt was 21.
Oh, okay.
Matt had been a hairdresser and a diesel mechanic, and Ron had been a waiter.
Okay.
Best woodworkers.
Yes, they are good. They're great.
They're both skilled. They're good boys.
Yeah. Yeah, they're trying, they're running it, and hopefully they'll succeed.
For the last 10 years, they make everything that comes out of here.
Yes.
I do a little bit, but mostly them.
But you said you were doing something just recently.
I make kids' blocks.
But weren't you doing a table I called you the other day?
Huh?
When I called you, weren't you doing a tables or something?
Oh, I was cutting parts out.
Okay.
Yeah, I still do that. I do the drawings, cut the parts out. Yeah, I give them a lot of work. I've been giving them a lot of work. So I've been getting calls.
Good, yeah.
I just made 4 sets of kids' blocks, sold them all.
Okay.
Actually, they're down in the shop. I'm waiting for the last couple of things. A friend of mine's turning some shapes for me. And I'm using up scrap wood. I haven't cut into one board. It's all scrap wood and sticker stock from my drawing in the shed. Yeah, it's great. I go down there all alone, no noise, no music, nothing, just me and the sandpaper.
Therapeutic.
I love it. Oh, one set's for my granddaughter. I was going to give it to her for her second birthday last Christmas, and then I thought, well, it's too young for a young girl to play with blocks or a young boy. Then I went over to the house a couple days later, and there she is in her bedroom with her brother Julian, who I made a set of blocks for, and they're playing with blocks together.
It's funny thing that that's one of the vivid memories. My grandfather, who was not a woodworker but let me use his tools, and I cut my fingers a lot and all that. I learned the hand plane with him, who was an entomologist, and has absolutely nothing to do with woodworking, but he had tools. He was giving me ability to do it, but he took me to a shop of someone who lived like a block away. There was a shop next to the house, and I do remember the table saw, and the older gentleman was cutting wood blocks for me. Little squares. I do remember that. I don't remember when it was, how old I was, but I do remember that.
Yeah. I'm giving him to Ava, that's my granddaughter, on her half birthday.
Okay.
So it'll be the only thing she gets.
Oh, good thing
She's
that
gonna
she
love.
has
This is a good set of blocks.
I'm sure they
Well,
are.
they're all different woods. It's not all,
Oh, they're GWAL blocks.
T-Bob blocks, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. There's like 12 different kinds of wood, maybe more. Yep.
She's gonna grow up a wood junkie.
You can add this creative thing we're talking about to anything you do. It's like when I'm talking to the boys in the shop.
You're putting a seed there.
I said everything you guys do from now on in your life, everything, should express your creativity. The way you live, the way you cook, the way you do, everything you do should show your uniqueness and your ability to make things happen, so that people can identify you as a creator. When I go into an artist's house that looks like a high school dorm, what is this? They only create when they're in their studio? Can't you make your life a creative? You can, sort of.
Yeah,
You can.
Yeah, you can if you're organized.
You can put the tub where you want. Put the stove in the middle of the room.
Oh, thank you very much, Hank.
Pleasure.
It's
Did we get anything?
been a pleasure. Did we get anything? Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.